What is going wrong at Chelsea Football Club? Tonight was yet another uninspiring and pretty disappointing performance at Stamford Bridge, and yet another terrible result under the leadership of Graham Potter. In the last 11 games, Chelsea have only managed 2 wins. They've had 3 draws and 6 losses. That is absolutely abysmal, and that is truly bleak. Now, in terms of what went wrong tonight, we can talk about it, and we can actually start with the positives, because actually, I thought Enzo Fernandez played quite well tonight. When you look at his statistics, he played 1 key pass tonight. He actually completed 90% of his long balls. He attempted 7 and completed 6. His pass accuracy was sitting at 85%. And on top of that, he actually didn't lose possession too many times. He was involved in terms of clearances and blocks. He had 3 clearances, 1 block, and 6 tackles. He didn't get dribbled past that often, and he looked like a force to be reckoned with. There was never a moment in tonight's game where I thought to myself, Enzo Fernandez is going to be a problem at Chelsea. In fact, I thought quite the opposite. I thought he was a breath of fresh air. I thought that Enzo Fernandez was at the epicenter of everything positive for Chelsea Football Club, because he was at the base of the midfield, and he really showed what Chelsea have been missing for a very long time with the injury of N'Golo Kante, and obviously them not addressing the CDM position. But that's pretty much where the positives end. You could rope Thiago Silva and Bediashile in, and Kepa to a certain extent, and say they had good games, but I think they were just very busy tonight, which is symbolic of how bad Chelsea were, and not necessarily how good they were as defenders and as a defensive unit. In my opinion, Chelsea at home should not be that busy against Fulham. And yes, Fulham are flying high at the moment. They're 6th in the table. They're one of the best teams in the Premier League, but still, Chelsea are Chelsea, and Chelsea will be held to the standard that Chelsea should be held to, regardless of circumstance and regardless of what's going on. Speaking of which, Gallagher, he was not great tonight. And I know that Gallagher has become a sort of easy target, and people spend hours pontificating about his lack of technical ability and how limited he is as a footballer. But it genuinely is true. There were so many moments tonight where he received the ball, and he wasn't receiving the ball on the half turn and anticipating a forward pass. And even when he did receive it on the half turn and looked up and looked forward, he took too many touches, and he gave Fulham a chance to trigger a press and just swarm him, basically forcing him to either play backwards or sideways and not really play forwards. Now, he played a couple of few good forward passes, but it just wasn't enough across the entire 90 minutes. When you couple that with the fact that Mason Mount, despite playing a beautiful ball to Kai Havertz and putting it on a silver platter for Kai Havertz, who should have buried it, by the way, despite that, he also wasn't great tonight. And I think Gallagher and Mount in a midfield too, especially as the more advanced midfielders, is just really depressing to watch as a neutral. I'm not going to lie. And the ironic part is your most creative player for Chelsea was actually playing in the 6. Isn't that funny? Because I think Enzo Fernandez was actually Chelsea's most creative player tonight, but he was Chelsea's deepest player. Kind of funny, hey? Because Mason Mount and Gallagher are just not good enough in terms of the creative elements of the game and the creative art, right? They just don't create chances, and they're not players that you typically associate with dominating a game and really making things happen and making things tick, especially not Gallagher. I think Mason Mount on his day can do it, but he's just out of form at the moment. And the sad thing is, you look at that bench and you look at what Graham Potter has to work with. The fact that I don't think Kovacic is fit yet. I think he has recovered from his injury, but I'm not sure if he's fit. Otherwise, I'd imagine he would have been on the bench today. You look at that bench, not really many options for Potter. There is no midfielder he brings on there that does a better job than Conor Gallagher or Mason Mount. And that is the tricky part with Chelsea at the moment, is that on the one hand, you can criticize Potter for the formations and the players he chooses to start, but on the other hand, context must be applied. Not only is he still a relatively new manager at Chelsea, and not only is this a massive job, which most managers in world football would struggle with, but you've got to couple it with the fact that Chelsea are dealing with a lot of injuries at the moment. And despite spending an absurd amount of money in the transfer window, there is still a bidding in period for a lot of these signings. Right, and so that's something you cannot escape from. I think Kovacic was massively missed tonight. Kovacic was hugely missed tonight, and when he comes back into this Chelsea team, I think you will see a different side under Graham Potter. When you couple Kovacic with Kante and Enzo Fernandez, you might have a functional midfield at Stamford Bridge. But until that point comes, it's going to be dark times for Chelsea fans. I mean, Kai Havertz was terrible tonight. He did not register a single shot on target despite playing the full 95 minutes. right? Because there was 5 minutes added on. So he played the full 95 minutes today, and he could not register a single shot on target, despite having 3 big chances. He genuinely had 3 big chances. One of them was a absolute clear-cut chance. Now, according to SofaScore, he missed all 3 of them, and according to the eye test, he missed all 3 of them. So he was just terrible tonight. He had a 5.8 rating on SofaScore. For me, that's generous. I think I would give him a 4, maybe even a 3. But yeah, man, Kai Havertz is a weird player. And again, he's a victim of circumstance because, again, who else can Chelsea play? You cannot tell me Aubameyang does a better job in that situation. And people always use the argument of Aubameyang's a better finisher. Look at what he did at Arsenal, blah, 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 blah. Aubameyang's not that player anymore. Aubameyang is finished. Aubameyang looks disinterested. His body language looks like somebody who just has checked out mentally ever since getting that retirement package at Arsenal and getting the second retirement package at Barcelona and then subsequently getting let go by Barcelona once they realize what a big mistake they've made. He just hasn't looked like the same player. Aubameyang looks like somebody who's just given up on football. And I know that's an extremely disrespectful thing to say because he is a professional and he probably wakes up every morning and holds himself to a very high standard and is very serious about his craft and his profession. I don't know. I don't have Aubameyang in my contacts list. I can't send him a message. I don't know what's going through his head. So it is incredibly disrespectful to just say that somebody doesn't care, but it looks like he doesn't care. That's just me being honest. If I was a Chelsea fan, I wouldn't even begin to waste energy venting about how bad Kai Havertz was tonight because who else can play up front? There is no one. There is absolutely no one. Isn't it crazy how Chelsea spent all that money and they still have not got a striker and a functional midfield? I guess the saying that money doesn't buy happiness is true if you're a Chelsea fan. But yeah, man, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Chelsea Football Club, what is going wrong with them? For me personally, I just think they're in a massive transition period at the moment, and these are just growth pains. And if Chelsea fans want any solace or any consolation, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You've got to learn to crawl before you can walk, and you've got to learn to walk before you can run. And whichever way you cut this, you sack Potter, you keep Potter, whichever way you try to do this, there's going to be a transitional period. And that's something Chelsea fans are not very used to because obviously under Roman Abramovich, they were conditioned for instant gratification and instant success. That doesn't exist anymore, especially when you look at the landscape of the Premier League, when you look at what Arsenal are doing, when you look at what Manchester United are doing, when you look at what Man City have done and the dynasty they've built, and you look at a team like Liverpool, even though Liverpool are down in the dumps right now, if they were potentially to get their act together, suddenly you've got to get past 4 teams. It ain't as easy as it was back in the Abramovich days, early in the Abramovich days. Now the Premier League is a lot more competitive than it's ever been, and so Chelsea fans, whichever way you cut it, spend another 600 million. Heck, sack Graham Potter and get the best manager in the world. It's going to take time, regardless of what you do and regardless of what you believe. Just my opinion.